Hello, everyone. Hi, I'm Quentin Irvine from Inquire and Vent. I'll be your MC today for this session, which is reducing waste during construction. I run a building business, in design and build business, Inquire and Vent. We're based in Creswick, Victoria, a country town near Ballarat. I acknowledge the traditional owners of this land as the Jaja Warong people. And it's interesting to note that these traditional owners back in the day before colonial settlement didn't have waste as a problem. That's really a modern human problem. So that's good to sort of identify where it all stems from. We design and build eco-friendly homes, which are, amongst other things, recyclable. And they have other eco features like the one behind me, which is the Recyclable house. And I've been asked to MC for this, I believe, because when you design a house which is recyclable, it means that all the materials that go into it are recyclable, and therefore waste during construction is almost nil. So I'll get all the participants to introduce themselves now, starting with, I think it's Daniel Reitsma, is that right?
Yeah, hi Quentin, it's Daniel Reitsma.
Hi Daniel.
How you going?
Good, thanks, welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm a director of Map House, and we're very proud to feature our first two-storey Map House for Sustainable House Day this year. So we build using a hybrid method of prefabrication building. So we do a pod system for all your bathrooms and kitchens, and then a flat pack system for the rest of the house. I'm a carpenter by trade, so I've been in the building industry since I left school. And yeah, throughout building, doing new builds and renovations, one of the major things with building is all the waste that's generated. So that's why I kind of started this this trip, I guess, down looking at prefabrication as a way of reducing waste during construction. The reason it does help reduce waste is because the majority of the house is built in a factory, so any leftover stuff that's not used on one house can be used on the next one. And then using a hybrid system of building means that at the end of this building's life, it can be disassembled and recycled either as other panels, or the panels can be broken down and recycled as individual parts, because it's a steel framed house with an MGO board that can be reused. So yeah, that's a quick introduction to why we do what we do and how it works.
Awesome. And now we'll just hear a quick introduction from Ruth with the Suho Type B 8.2 star home.
Hi everyone. So Suho has traditionally been for many years in compliance, and in the last 5 or so years we have ventured into actually building homes. We've got a lot of people in architecture and design and engineering backgrounds. Our focus in terms of sustainability goes beyond just getting compliance and actually looking at the footprint of materials, how to reduce the materials that are inside of the house, and therefore reduce the amount of waste that could be put in the houses, as they are essentially able to be rubber stamped elsewhere. We also, on this particular house, the 10-star house, we actually also involved Keystep, which for non-South Australians is Keep South Australia Beautiful. It's an environmental solutions company that comes in and actually teaches the trades during construction and in TAFE about reducing construction waste, how to deal with waste on the site effectively, including even paints, which in this instance were low VOC. But that kind of contributes to a more holistic view of design and what buildings we can put out there, so that hopefully not only are the houses healthy, but the actual site is healthy as well. So there's no construction waste on site. And on this particular house, I believe about 95% of the construction waste was actually recycled. And where possible, we've used things that can be recycled at the end of their life as well.
Awesome. Thanks for that. And now we'll hear a quick introduction from Michelle Stephenson, I believe, regarding the Candlebark House.
Yes, thank you, Quentin. Hello, everyone.
Welcome.
Thank you. We're practically neighbours, Quentin,
Yeah,
being in
that's
Dalesford. Yeah. So Michelle Stephenson and my partner Simon O'Keefe, we designed our home ourselves, and we were owner builders and built it ourselves. So our goal for the project was to create an energy efficient, low impact home, which would also be future proof, that we could cater for our changing needs, but also be adaptive to continuing climate change. It was a fantastic learning experience. My understanding became much more deep as a result of understanding how you can leverage the natural environment through orientation and airflow, use of plants and choices of materials. Like, we tried to use a lot of recyclable materials through the process. And all these elements have come together to create a really wonderful living space. Another important part of the process was not just focused on the outcome, but also managing the waste we produced during the construction phase. So minimising waste to landfill was our aim, and we found through creating awareness, good planning and leveraging our local transfer station as recycling streams, we sent very little to landfill. So our home is based on just under 1.5 acres. And as you can see, we've got a large dam that we leverage to grow lots of food, as well as creating lots of native corridors for the local fauna. So we wanted to create a really productive haven for ourselves and our family and friends, and in the long term be a self-sustaining ecosystem. And managing the waste in the process, living in it as well.
Awesome. Looks beautiful.
Thank you.
All right. So my first question was, what strategies did you employ to reduce? Oh, sorry. Firstly, I'll just add, so we've got a Q&A on this system, on this webinar system. So if any of the audience want to ask a question, please add questions to the Q&A, and I'll try and ask them as we go. My first question was going to be, what strategies did you employ to reduce waste during construction? We've already had people answer that a little bit, but does anyone want to add to that now to start with? Hands up, not so much. Yeah. Sorry, Michelle. Oh, yep, sorry. Yep, go for it. Yeah, Ruth, go for it. Sorry.
You. Okay. So part of what we did in terms of reducing waste on site is be quite involved with not only the estimation and resourcing materials from suppliers, but looking at the design, ensuring that we were, where possible, using panel sizes, so we're reducing the amount of offcuts on site. Where we were on site, and it was very, very important to actually be on site and you know, oversee that process, because there's things that you can fix there as well that general trades might not be used to doing. So again, it was more of a holistic approach, because we didn't want to have to create these houses, and if we're creating off the plan versions of these, we want this methodology to be replicable. So we want other houses that are built from this to also reduce construction waste. So that was one of the things that we did. In terms of looking at construction waste from the point of view of the things that are actually installed, we tried to use things that didn't have additional processes on them, so that the whole of the building, the construction, has less waste or less additional process in. So exposed brickwork, less render. The aluminium windows, aluminium has an element of recyclability at the end of its life, rather than UPVC, as well as a number of other things inside of the house, like even the tapware, which didn't have chrome plating on it. So again, like some of those other construction techniques that are just replicated in mass scales can be eliminated if we're putting it in there from a word go, essentially.
Sure. And I noticed that your house, as well as the Candlebark house, uses like brickwork internally, and it's not rendered and it's not painted. That was a really good strategy, because I suppose, you know, once you paint it, it's sort of somewhat contaminated. So it's just like just a little bit nicer and a little bit more recyclable when it's not painted. So that's really cool too.
Less maintenance too.
And less maintenance. Yeah, that's right. Exactly.
It
Yeah.
goes through with a pen, you know, it adds character. So.
Yeah, for sure. And did you find it hard to get tradies on board with, like, you know, trying to keep up with this recycling mandate? Did you actually get them to sort on site, like what they were doing and their waste they produced and that sort of stuff?
Partly we did, however, because Keystep was so involved and also delivering the training through the tapes and things, any trades that came on site, they had toolbox meetings, which essentially sat them down and they kind of bribed them with cakes and so forth. But it works, and that you know, it's creating that low-key casual dialogue that some of these trades need to instruct them on how we want to move forward with buildings. And I guess for us, building up relationships with those trades, that's a good step because they're already trained on that project and we can use them on another project as well. Yeah,
that's great. Also, Daniel, can I just ask, where is your house based? I wasn't sure. I've lost track of where that was based.
Yeah, sure. We're in New South Wales, so mid-north coast. So yeah, it's quite a nice, warm, temperate climate. And it was interesting what Ruth said too about how they design their houses using sizes that use panel sheet sizes to reduce waste. That's one of the main things that dictated what size panels we'd use. It's the exact size of the sheet. So
your system is based around that, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
To reduce waste. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So yeah, it's a good way to think about when you're building houses.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. I also noticed that your house had interesting footings. Can you tell us about that a little bit?
Yeah. So the idea of the house is, nothing here does last forever. One day someone's going to do something that I never planned to the house. And it's really possible for it to be disassembled, including the footings. There's no concrete in the house at all. And so that it's a Victorian invention called Mega Anchor. It's basically glorified tent pegs, I call it. It's a special stirrup, and it's got a guide to jam 3 pegs into the ground on 3 different angles. And I've used it on a lot of different sites, from really highly reactive clay sites, sand site and rock. And because it's pipes driven into the ground is able to move around it if it's a reactive site. And with sand and with rock, it's either drilled in or just really long pipes jacking it into the ground. So it's very, very low tech as well. Suits, steep sloping sites and hard to reach areas, so rural areas where you can't get concrete trucks and stuff. So
yeah, it's a great system, isn't it? And I guess it lowers embodied energy and all that sort of stuff with concrete and all that sort of thing. And from a recycling point of view, I mean, it's just galvanized steel pipe. So, any offcuts that you guys produced, I'm sure just went into a recycling, system or whatever, you get paid for it. Yeah. Which is really great.
And also by doing a panelled system means you can start off with a small footprint, and then when you extend in the future, you're not demolishing anything, you're just reusing panels and adding to it.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Cool. We've got a question. Oh no, it's disappeared. Ruth, question for Ruth. Someone's asking what the name of the company you used for waste reduction and training for tradies was. If you could just mention that again.
Yes, so it's Keystep. It's Keep South Australia Beautiful. So they've been around for, I don't know, as long as I can remember. So I'm 40 this year, so a very long time, maybe 30 years. And they've looked at waste across the board in many, many different, trades and so forth, disciplines. But in particular, because they're teaching in the TAFE sector now, it's a perfect opportunity to also reduce construction waste. And Adelaide has always been quite hot on recycling, bottles and so forth. So I think this is probably a good step for us, and they use both this house and the 10-star house as essentially a building platform to really push this through the different tertiary institutions that a lot of the tradies are going through. So Keystep.
Are they a government organisation, or are they not for profit, or are they just a business? Or
I think they might be a non-for-profit, but you can go to the 10-star with 10, 10starhome.com.au website, and there should be a link on there to Richard Balaninski, who
Yep.
is from Keystep, if you do want more information.
Sure.
Yep.
Yep. Awesome. Someone's asking, this might be a general question, what would you say are the main materials that go into skips on a standard building site? I'm interested in doing a project that looks into utilizing waste material from construction and diverting it from landfill. Does anyone want to answer that one? Maybe Michelle, perhaps, or anyone?
Yep, happy to do that.
Yep.
I think probably one of the important parts of the initial setup, particularly for us being owner builders, is setting up, not bringing a skip bin onto site for starters, so you can avoid everything just being like it's a psychological thing for tradies just keep throwing things into the bin. But we found, because we set up all the streams, we also had some construction waste that was also, we were fortunate through our transfer station that they had construction waste being recycled. There's someone in Ballarat, which is one of the main towns near us. So in terms of the types of materials, we could recycle most things, even polystyrene, you know, metals, plastics, that type of thing. So it starts getting a bit thinner on the ground as to what potentially could go into a skip bin that this person's asking after. But Daniel, you were going to put up your hand. You might have had something to add there.
Yeah, just when I was doing, you know, your typical traditional build stuff, what generally went to the skip bins was, you know, offcuts of gyprock and you know, leftover insulation. When it comes to renovations, often windows and that can't be reused if they're old timber ones that are too rotten. But like Michelle was saying, there is a lot of waste transfer stations that have recycling shops where you can get, you know, really cheap second-hand aluminium windows or timber windows and stuff like that. Also, if anyone's doing a kitchen reno, we used to just take photos of it before we ripped it out and say, look, this is what we're disassembling as much as we can. Can anyone use it? And just put it up on, you know, Freebay or, you know, Facebook and stuff like that.
Yeah, because we had success with the window with our neighbours who were building. We have got a double glazed, it was a door and it had a few chips on the edge and they wanted to just throw it out, and we took hold of that and turned it into our outdoor table that's on our deck, had some metal legs made for it, and $120 later we've got this fantastic table. So there's lots to be done with waste.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I can add to this a little bit as well. Like, I mean, I suppose on a traditional building site, there are certain things that just can't really be recycled at all, like things like treated pine and this really sort of toxic stuff that you don't really want to recycle. I mean, you could reuse it and maybe make smaller objects that can be made out of that stuff, like some garden furniture or something. But yeah, and also everything once it's painted, I suppose. Yeah, everything just gets contaminated.
I was just
what else have we got? Yep.
Quentin, I was just going to say also, something that we've found is for any homeowner out there looking for builders, some responsible builders are actually recycling some of this stuff that would normally go on the skip too, which can also save in construction cost. Most of that is seen through Facebook, the Facebook marketplace, but that is another great way of sourcing recycled content as well. Yeah,
definitely. And I guess that's also very relevant with I guess some of what we're talking about here is really more reuse, isn't it? Like if you're doing a renovation, you pull a window out and it's, you know, not necessarily rotten or, you know, damaged. It's just that it's in the wrong spot and the new homeowner doesn't want that window anymore, or someone's replacing their kitchen, for example, and, you know, just wants a new kitchen, but, you know, someone else might still want the old kitchen. It's really more reuse than recycling. But it's all good, and it's all reducing waste to landfill. What else? So what else? Did anyone consider like more natural materials when designing or building with their design and build projects, like things like straw bale or mud brick or rammed earth, that sort of thing, which is sort of like from the earth, very little processing and can easily go back to the earth? Did anyone consider that sort of stuff? Does anyone want to speak to that point? Yep, Daniel, sorry.
Yeah, so while I've been a builder, I've worked on many different types of buildings, including round earth and straw bale. And that's what we were going to do on our place here on our block, which is, it's our house, a 2-story house. And I just found that while it's good if you've got a good big block, and if you've got the labour power and the resources, that's great. But for the everyday punter out there that just wants to build a house in suburbia, it's not really a viable option. There are some companies that do like a mud brick type of, supply and deliver stuff, but it's not really available. But yeah, if you are, blessed enough to be in a spot where you've got the right soils and you've got a fit young body that can do all the round earth and stuff like that, then yeah, it's a great way. They're really comfortable houses. But it's not. I've found it's not readily available to everyday people, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of those things have a lot of labour involved, and that doesn't mean that like they're a bad solution. They're often a really, really good solution. But yeah, that can cost more, and people have this kind of idea that these things are like really cheap and stuff, but they're often, same price or even more expensive if you're actually paying for all the labour to do it. But yeah, I'd love to see more of that sort of stuff happening for sure, and for it to become a bit more mainstream. I guess the other thing with your block is it was a sloping site, right? And you with that mega ranker system, or someone also asked what the system was for the footing. So the footing system that Daniel used was mega ranker, and that's really a lightweight construction system. So you're not really going to go build like massive earth walls and stuff on top of that. I'm sure that in some instances you might be able to do a little bit of that sort of thing, but yeah, not really lending to it very well. What else is there? Lots of takeaway food containers from the tradies, someone's saying. Yeah, wouldn't it be great if like every industry, not just the building industry, sort of took some of this stuff on board and it was just designing things for recyclability, as we are, like just thinking about what people are going to do and how people are going to dispose of things. There are quite a lot of companies out there that are doing, only recyclable and compostable takeaway containers and coffee cups and stuff. It should just be made illegal, really, shouldn't it, to still be doing these coffee cups that you can't recycle or compost and that sort of thing. Someone else is asking, what about all those tubes of things that tradies squeeze into cracks? Can they be recycled? I don't know. Does anyone have any ideas about that?
I think my husband's actually in sustainability and waste, so you can imagine like the plethora of bins and separation that we have. I believe because some of that stuff is tampered with other chemicals that it can't be. And it's funny when you're doing an energy efficient house and you're putting like spray foams around windows and that, it's great and it's perfect for performance, but yes, it probably does have an element that we can't recycle because of that cross-contamination between materials. Yeah. I was going to say though, in terms of, recycling the house at the end of life, and kind of speaks to what Danny was talking about as well, if the quality of the construction is better and maintained over its lifespan, then there's more chance of it being recycled as well. So if you're making sure that the building's nice and airtight, the quality of the air is good, there's less condensation build up, then you'll actually be able to, recycle things like bricks and potentially plasterboard and so forth. And I think it was Daniel again that spoke about the NGO board that he used internally. I think he's nodding. Strategies like that, like switching up from the typical plasterboard is such a good thing for people to pursue and research, because there are different alternatives out there that might not be offered to you. So it's a really good way to reduce that construction waste.
Yeah, keep in mind that plasterboard is recyclable, especially if it's not painted yet. So, in terms of construction waste, if it's a new build, it's recyclable. And then if you do paint it with the right paints, there are natural paints on the market, things like bioproducts and some of the others, Livos, it can still be recyclable. And it becomes fertilizer for farmers and stuff who put gypsum on their land to break up clay soils and that sort of thing. So someone else is asking about hempcrete and do we recommend anyone for doing hempcrete and building materials. There's I think there's been a whole seminar on that today, so go check that out. It's great material. What else? Okay, someone's asking about the sort of the dichotomy between steel framing and timber framing, and what we think might be, you know, more sustainable and more recyclable at the end of life. Obviously, they're actually both really good materials. I mean, the steel is definitely recyclable. That, I believe, Daniel, you're using that in your frames. It's all steel framed. Is that correct? Can you actually tell us what your frames and like what your sort of wall makeups are, Daniel, and sort of how that all works?
Sure, yeah, we use it. It's basically a steel framed house. The reason we do that is, and I guess as far as what you were saying with, you know, what's more sustainable, timber or steel, I find it depends on which sales rep you talk to as to which one's more sustainable. But I think whatever you're giving thought to, you look at the end, you know, life cycle of the product. We chose steel because you know, we've got a lot of termites in this area and also in bushfire zone. Steel is just non-combustible and termites don't like it, so it ticks 2 boxes really quickly. Also, with the timber these days, it's getting grown that quick. It's not too straight anymore. So there's often a lot of, for the panels we were making, we needed, you know, something that was inherently straight. And so, yeah, our wall panels are basically the same internal or external. It's a steel framed wall frame with an MGO board both inside and outside, and painted with a low VOC water-based 2-part paint. So it's really, really durable. And yeah, we just do that because a wall panel can be either internal or external. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I mean, my take on it would be that, yeah, both are really fairly sustainable options. Obviously, with a steel frame, you have a bit more of a thermal bridge in the framing where your studs are and stuff. But, you know, like with more insulation and thermal sort of breaks and stuff, there's ways to get around that. Yeah, and I guess it also depends on how you're fixing things to that steel or timber frame to keep it recyclable. Like in our houses, we don't glue plasterboard to walls. We do the screw only approach, and so you can actually, yeah, pull things off and it's not contaminating the timber frames. People are asking, what about demolition? Any pointers, anything special to look for that can be easily recycled? Would anyone like to speak to that point when we're demolishing houses? Yep, sure. Daniel, go for it.
Yeah, I'm really lucky. We've got 50 acres here, and any houses we've demolished, I've just got a massive pile of hardwood that I build furniture out of in my spare time. So yeah, if you're demolishing a house, just have a look at the timber beams and the roof and stuff. Anything that's, you know, kind of 70s and 60s built, it's probably built out of hardwood and it will last a long time. Oregon, not so much, but yeah, there's often in your roof spaces really good big section sizes of timber that can be either reused or make really cool furniture and stuff out of.
Yeah, definitely. And as I was saying with, you know, not gluing things to things, like old houses didn't have that problem. You know, people weren't gluing plasterboard to houses, like with lath and plaster walls. The only thing you'll get like a little bit of lime sort of discoloration and stuff from the lime plasters they use, but that's actually can be made a feature if you're making furniture. Or you can just buzz it off, sand it off, whatever. Is there a bulk plastic recycling system for the wrapping on the materials turning up to site? Michelle, have you got anything on that?
Yeah, well, I know that Replas, so they run the program Recyclable, and you'll see them often in the supermarket. So I believe that because I know at one point with our transfer station, because I actually got the plastic bag free campaign happening here in Dalesford, and we actually had that set up as a stream at the transfer station. So Replas, I think, because they'll take all those soft plastics which they make outdoor furniture with. So that's certainly an option to investigate, whether they're taking all that construction as well.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we've been doing that with like our building wrap offcuts, because we use like a breathable wrap, which is essentially, I think it's polypropylene or polyethylene, I forget, but it's all one plastic. So in theory, it should be recyclable, but it's just about whether the systems actually, you know, exist for this stuff to be recycled, which is very frustrating sometimes. The other thing that we have a lot of problem with on our builds is just like stuff you wouldn't even think about. It's not even construction material. Like once you design a house that has construction materials that are recyclable, it's things like packaging, like, you know, like the range hood arrives and you've got all this packaging and you're like, you know, if it's cardboard, it's all good. If it's polystyrene, it's less good. You can still recycle it, but it's a pain to sort of, you know, get all these things to the right places for recycling. But and then all those plastic bags and stuff. So yeah, we're starting to really collect all that soft plastic type stuff, which is like building wrap and all the plastic bags from all the products that arrive and that sort of thing. And then there's a lot of really frustrating things like, you know, tapware that comes in like 6 different layers of bags and like, you know, these sort of like, they're trying to make it look like a more luxurious product, I suppose, you know, by having like layers and layers of packaging, kind of like unpacking jewelry or something. But yeah, it's just frustrating if you're trying to recycle things. What do you think about that, Michelle? Have you got anything else to add?
It's one of the banes of my life. But I think that's where, like, we had some input in the past sort of couple of years around the whole packaging stewardship legislation. And again, it just gets back to consumers. The more we put pressure back onto the manufacturers and how they package up this, these different items, that we can start in, you know, having some say and shift in how they've got to take some responsibility. They need to start taking this packaging back, and as well as their products, you know, this circular economy, which state government is really starting to drive. So I'm hoping we see some really good things coming out of that.
Yeah, sure.
Further on what Michelle just said, I actually had a client once that went and sourced all those appliances and things themselves and actually demanded that that company take their own rubbish. And that was part of their purchasing the appliances and tapware and so forth. So
yeah, cool.
Definitely consumer level.
And Ruth, you were saying that you actually like had tapware and things that didn't have chrome on them. Like, did you have to ask for that as a special thing, or is, like, I know some brands are just doing that as new product lines these days?
Yes, well, we actually have a local place not too far from here. So it's in South Australia, and they basically hand make all the tapware and fixtures and, and the other things that we didn't have in their range. We inquired with them. So they actually make it without the chrome plating on it. Yeah.
Awesome. Just another question. People are asking, did any of you contact manufacturers of products, like of building materials or products, to see if they could close a loop and like if you could send offcuts back to them and that sort of stuff? That might be one for Daniel. Like, for example, does your magnesium oxide board go back to the manufacturer to like be crushed up and make more magnesium oxide board or that sort of thing? Like,
we're being told that we can, but we have to ship a container load back.
Right.
Because it is, you know, produced in China at the moment. There are looking to make it in Australia. As soon as they do, I'd be very interested to hear about it.
Yeah, sure.
But what we do is, because we build, you know, all our panels in the factory, we've got a lot of offcuts, and we use that in other parts of the building. So we just have piles of offcuts that we can reuse. Yeah, so very minimal goes into the waste bin.
Yeah, sure. Awesome. Someone's saying they've heard that magnesium oxide board can that comes from China, and sometimes there's no guarantee it doesn't have asbestos in it. Do you want to just answer that question? Yeah,
I heard that as well when we were doing our research. We've used a few different suppliers of MGO board over the years, and found that, because it's made in China, you need someone that's got a really good handle on the quality control, which we have found now. And we just do the random sample tests as well. And, you know, it only costs us $90 a sample. So we'll just, out of every couple of batches, just send a bit off and test it for asbestos. And so far, we haven't had any. So I think that might be a bit of scaremongering, but it doesn't hurt to test it just to have peace of mind.
Yeah. Hopefully in Australia, when we import things, we sort of do a bit of that testing. I'm not really sure how it works, but I have heard of a PNG entire office building that was clad in not sure if it was magnesium oxide board, but a cement sheet, and it was all asbestos, and it had to be torn down straight after the finish of the construction process, which is pretty shocking. And that was Chinese stuff, apparently. Are you guys, hang on, are these participants looking at trying to push their design agenda further to improve waste outcomes? Yeah, do you have like next steps on what you would do for your next builds? Like, are you sort of constantly kind of working on, sorry, was that Ruth? Did you put your hand up?
Oh, I scratched myself, but I was nodding, yes.
Sorry. Yeah.
What I personally hope to push is that this does become a framework in the design process that you discuss with the client, you discuss with the builder as you're going through tender, and you make it a real focus on not just providing a quality of house, but quality of site. And a lot of the target market, at least that we see, is wanting that as well. We get a lot of people wanting to actually assist the design process by sourcing these materials themselves, which is great. I'd much rather have a role in facilitating that and hand-holding them through that, so that they feel at the end of the build that they've actually done something ethically right, because that's going to give them the most fulfillment in the lifespan in that house. And if that's 40 years, then that's great. So it's very much about being involved, and therefore the questions that they're giving us can influence our design process and our workflow, so that we can then use that on someone else.
Yeah, that's great. And Michelle, did you guys actually kind of like keep track of all the different sort of like how much you could recycle in terms of your builds? Did you keep track of like the different categories and that sort of stuff?
It's a great question, because once when we first kicked off, because I had all the streams, because I used all the timber pellets that we'd accumulated, and I had it all set up, signage, and then we also had like our shed where everyone was having lunch, the compost bin and the different bins for tradies to make sure they weren't just chucking it in the paddock. I started trying to keep track of, because I really wanted to be able to measure what actually went to landfill in the end. The process, having gone on for 18 months, and, there's so much, when you're an owner builder too, there's so much going on.
Oh, yeah.
I probably just rely more on Simon, my other half, because, he painstakingly take all these streams to the transfer station and make sure it all went into the right spots. I was asking him the other day, just reflecting on what actually went into landfill, and he goes, there was hardly anything in the end. Like, it'd be lucky if it was a trailer load. So
yeah.
So in the scheme of things, and again, like I was saying early on, having a skip bin on site, just avoiding that and setting up those streams, it's just such a psychological and a behaviour change to be able to get people to put things in the right spot, which also takes a bit of training.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely takes training. Ruth touched on this, but I guess one of the benefits that you could potentially have out of this, like if you're training tradies to sort of do their recycling, you're also sort of in a way just training them to stay tidy, which is quite useful. Like if you've got your electrician and you give him a bucket to put all these little PVC and copper offcuts into, and he's not doing it, then like it's just, it's a bit easier to make sure he's doing a good job, I suppose, of just keeping the site tidy. What else? The plastic can only be recycled 1 to 2 times, one of the Q&A things is, and yeah, that's true. I don't know if it's 1 to 2, but it can't be recycled forever, that's for sure. So I guess with, if we can design out things like plastic as much as possible, because they are limited in their recyclability, and that's always a good thing.
I think we might have to wrap it up, actually, Quentin.
Sorry?
We might have to wrap it up, I'm afraid, actually.
No worries. I'm sorry. I've probably lost track of time.
No, that's all right.
Yeah. Well, thank you to everyone for participating, and hopefully it was informative and useful for people.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a really fascinating session, actually. As someone who has done a lot of construction work over the years, the amount of stuff that just gets chucked into a skip is really bad. So I hope this can be part of a slow but significant change in culture. So thank you to Quentin and all the panelists. Our next and final session will be in a similar vein. It's about minimizing household waste. It will be emceed by Karina Turner of Women Against Waste, and will feature participants from the 2DA Sustainable House, Dan and Manu's House, Sydney's Sustainable House, and the established passive solar rural house. We're going to watch a short video first, and then we will be back for our final session. But I do want to just remind everyone that although this is the final session coming up, Sustainable House Day doesn't end today. We are hosting 6 extension sessions over the next fortnight. These will dive deeper into some of the topics we're covering today, and you can book tickets on the website, which is sustainablehousday.com/extension sessions. So yeah, go and have a look and see if anything piques your interest. We are going to throw to a short video, and then we'll be back for our final session for the day.